Ever since we were 6, Mike and I were inseparable. The best of friends. We did everything together. Even when our curfews hit and we were forced to return to our homes, we found a way to prolong the fun. For my 9th birthday, I received one of those kiddie spy kits. Nothing in that kit interested me, at least, save for a pair of green walkie-talkies. Mike and I used those things to talk to each other every night throughout our adolescence. Though I could not see him, I always imagined we were mirror images of each other in those moments. Both of us laying on our backs in the dark, clutching our respective walkie-talkies in our right hands. Often, one of us would fall asleep to the comforting chatter of the other. The last person awake would always sign off with a, "See you soon." Our tradition of nighttime talks, along with our indestructible bond, lasted into our 20s. It might seem odd for anyone past the age of 14 to be talking with their friend via a child's toy, but the two of us were still young at heart, and we refused to relinquish that one bit of nostalgia. The nighttime talks came to an abrupt end one snowy night when Mike, on his way home from work, took a curve too quickly. A phone call came that night, instead of the usual crackle of the walkie-talkie. On it, Mike's sobbing mother relayed the message that my friend was no more. A few days later, I placed his green walkie-talkie in the casket with him. He was buried with it in his hands. Though I could not bring myself to throw out my walkie-talkie, I just couldn't bear to look at it. It sat in a desk drawer where it remained safely tucked away, mute and still. Years went by, and although I could not fill the void left by Mike's absence, I moved on with my life, eventually finding a wife, and I was content. My wife and I bought a house in another town, so all the possessions were disassembled and distributed among brown packing boxes. The walkie-talkie was in one of the last boxes I unpacked. I pulled it from its nesting of packing peanuts and I just stared at it. Though the plastic toy itself was light in weight, it was heavy with all the memories shared between two best friends. Out of curiosity, I decided that night to see if it would still work. To my surprise, the LED indicator on the front lit up when the walkie-talkie was powered on. Though I knew the toy was somewhat worthless now that its partner was absent, I found myself pressing down the talk button. "Hey Mike, I know it's been a while. I just wanted to say that I miss you, buddy." I didn't know what else to say, so I let go of the button. I waited for a moment, not sure what I was expecting, before placing the silent walkie-talkie on my computer desk. Sleep did not come easy that night. The creaks and groans of a new house were something that always took me a while to get used to. I laid awake next to my snoring wife, willing myself to fall asleep. Another noise began then to make its presence known. In between the sounds of settling wood, I heard a faint crackling. Extracting myself from my bedsheets, I followed the noise out into the hallway. With each step, the sound of static grew louder. I tracked the disturbance to the walkie-talkie, which still laid on my office desk. The little machine crackled away with white noise. I moved to pick it up, and as soon as my hand came in contact with it, all sound ceased. Thinking that the toy was picking up some sort of interference from my nearby radio or transmitter, I did not expect an answer when I depressed the talk button and spoke. "Hello?" Nothing happened for the span of a few heartbeats, and I moved to turn off the walkie-talkie. The sudden response, "Hiya, Sam," halted my movement. The voice, it came across so clearly, and I knew immediately that it belonged to Mike. I raked a shaking hand across my now sweating scalp and tried to determine if I was perhaps sleeping after all. Unable to pinch myself awake, I found myself with an urge to respond to my friend. "Mike?" I asked. "Of course, who else would it be? Madonna?" was the response. The statement was so like Mike, and I didn't doubt it was him who I was hearing. Instead, my doubt turned to my own sanity, but still, I felt compelled to say more. How is this possible? I managed to stutter. Man, you've been dead for 10 years. The voice didn't say anything for a moment, and in the silence, I was at once relieved and disappointed that nothing further happened. But then the walkie-talkie once again conveyed the voice of my dead friend. I don't worry about the specifics. It's just good to be able to talk to you. How have you been? Unsure of what to do. Unsure if I was dreaming and unsure if I was sane. I found myself doing what I did when I was a kid. I had a nightly conversation with my best friend, and the conversations continued the next night and the night after that. Over the course of a week, I reminisced with my friend. His voice would always trail off as the sun began to rise, falling completely silent as the first rays began to bathe my office in light. The walkie-talkie would burst to life once again late at night after my wife had fallen asleep. Surprisingly, and against my inner nature, I didn't question the phenomena, but rather accepted it for what it was. It was a chance to be a kid again. On the 10th day, my wife found me there in my office, mid-conversation. Her eyes, heavy with sleep, gazed at me questioningly. Why are you talking to yourself, honey? I knew then that I would have to divulge to her my nightly liaisons. Though I loathed to let another intrude on the gaiety I once again established with Mike, I was also excited to share in this newfound ability to communicate with loved ones now deceased. It's Mike, I blurted. My wife, privy to the past, came alert immediately and looked at me with concern. I've been speaking with him through the walkie-talkie, I went on hurriedly. Sam, she said in a soothing voice. Mike is dead and that walkie-talkie doesn't work. I watched then as she turned over the toy and removed the back cover. The slot where the batteries were supposed to be laid empty. I shook my head in denial. How can that be? I asked. I heard his voice, clear as day. At that moment, a rumbling laugh burst forth from the walkie-talkie's small speaker. There, I yelled. Can't you hear him laughing? She looked at me with fear and pity, and she shook her head. I managed to convince her that I had experienced a temporary mental break due to the stress of a new job. However, I had not managed to convince myself that all that had been transpired was purely a creation of my mind. I stayed away from the walkie-talkie for the next couple of weeks, and we avoided all mention of it. Though logic dictated that one cannot talk to people long since dead and buried, let alone by means of a child's toy, I couldn't let go of the feelings of nostalgia that had swamped me up upon hearing Mike's voice again. A month passed and the anniversary of Mike's death approached. During this time, the walkie-talkie remained shut away in a drawer. Knowing I could never move on if it was in my possession, I planned to rid myself of it. Rather than throwing it in the trash, just in case Mike's ghost was haunting the device, I thought it would be more fitting to take it to one of the places Mike and I used to play as kids. Knowing my wife would once again question my sanity, I made up an excuse to leave the house one evening. Twilight was starting when I turned onto the dirt road, which lay on the edge of my old hometown. The unpaved road led out to a large series of fields that, as kids, Mike and I used to use for our own base of activities. I exited my car and made my way across the darkening landscape. The tall grass whipped at my legs as I walked out towards the center of the first field. I meant to just lay the walkie-talkie on the ground there and leave, but a voice in the wind caught my attention. Sam, it called. Over here. Once again my heart stuttered as I recognized the voice of my best friend. This time it came not from the walkie-talkie still clutched in my hand, but from a little ways away to my left. In a trance, I followed the beckoning pleas, not paying attention to where I was walking. In my youth, I had memorized every inch of this wild space. I knew the location of every rock, every ditch, and every hole on the property. In my daze and advanced age, I had forgotten the old well that lay just at the edge of the field. A scream tore from my throat as I broke my foot through the rotting wood that used to cover the hole. I felt myself falling until finally my body met the rocky bottom with a sickening crunch. I lay hurt and in a daze. With my failing strength, I managed to turn myself over onto my back. Blood trickled from my mouth as my eyes searched the darkness above. I could just barely make out the last rays of sunlight fading from my view far above. Remarkably, the walkie-talkie survived the fall, cushioned from the impact by the shelter of my clenched right hand. I lay there on my back, in the darkness with the device, like a sick parody of my childhood. As if the very thought awakened it, the walkie-talkie crackled to life once again.
See you soon.